After being heartlessly cast out by my children, I uncovered an incredible life-changing opportunity that reignited not just my spirit, but the entire community as heart. Jim sat in his small, dimly lit living room. The shadows whispered the loneliness he felt ever since his children decided he was a burden. Memories of their laughter echoed like a haunting melody, but now the silence was merciless. The family gatherings filled with warmth were now just distant echoes, faded photographs in his mind. He remembered their childhoods, the birthday parties with cake and balloons, the holiday dinners where everyone crowded around the table. Each laugh was a thread weaving their family together, but in an instant, all of that had unraveled. One dreary afternoon, while wandering through town, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, he stumbled upon the old community center. The paint was peeling, and the windows were grimy, but in his mind, he could almost see the bright colors and hear the laughter that once filled its halls. He approached, intrigued and hopeful. Images of family potlucks and children playing tug-of-war danced in his head. Could this forgotten place hold the key to restoring not only its glory, but his own sense of belonging? Determined, Jim wandered inside. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the faint light streaming through the cracked windows. Old posters clinging to the walls told stories of a bygone era. He felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Perhaps he could bring it back to life. Perhaps he could breathe laughter into these cold walls again. As he gathered materials, he soon faced skepticism from neighbors who were barely making it through the day themselves. "Not another project, Jim," one grumbled. "What is the point?" They were trapped in their struggles, a community of fractured hopes with little faith in brighter tomorrows. Yet, with every crushing rejection, Jim remembered the warmth of those family meals, the joy of shared moments. He could feel those days whispering to him, urging him not to quit. He pressed on, finding an unlikely team among single parents and disillusioned teenagers, each one eager to reach for something better. Together, they painted walls, scrubbed floors, and shared stories that echoed their own struggles. And as they painted, Jim felt hope blossoming like spring flowers breaking through the frost. Just as laughter began to echo through the newly decorated halls, a twist of fate brought his children back to witness the transformation. Standing under the vibrant colors and the joyful chatter, they hesitated. Regret washed over them as they saw their father, not as a burden, but as a beacon of resilience. Would they find the courage to confront their past mistakes? Jim stood quietly at the door, heart swelling with trepidation, yet filled with hope. The community he helped revive was blooming, but would he finally get back the love of his children? The air was thick with anticipation. Would they come forward, embracing him anew? The question lingered, leaving Jim and the whole community on the edge of a tomorrow they never thought possible, ready to redefine their bonds and bravely face the future together. Jim took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions tumbling inside him. He stood just outside the entrance, a silent observer as laughter and chatter spilled from the rejuvenated community center. It was as if he were watching a play unfold, the vibrancy of life swirling around him, yet he felt distinctly separate, rooted in uncertainty. His children still lingered at the threshold, their faces a mix of disbelief and regret. They exchanged glances, their eyes darting between the vibrancy of the center and the figure of their father, a man they had pushed away in their struggles. 1,000 unspoken words hung heavily in the air, as if the world around them held its breath. Finally, Sarah, the youngest, took a tentative step forward. Her hesitation was palpable, but Jim felt as if the ground beneath him was shifting. Just a moment before, he was a stranger to them, but now he felt like a bridge they could cross together. "Dad?" she called softly, her voice wavering with uncertainty. The sound sliced through the noise, drawing the attention of the community members bustling within. Silence fell over the room like a thick blanket, all eyes drawn to the doorway. Jim's heart raced. He met Sarah's gaze, and for the first time in years, he felt his chest loosen. "I'm here," he replied, the words tumbling out with a mix of fear and hope. Mark, his oldest, stepped forward too, a look of shame mixed with longing on his face. I didn't know when we cut ties just how much we were letting go. The sincerity in his voice stirred something deep inside Jim, awakening memories of family dinners and endless stories that made him feel whole. Jim's heart was a tempest, swirling with emotions he struggled to contain. "You're here now. That's what matters," he said, his voice steadying as he stepped further into the light. Little by little, the tension broke as the crowd around him whispered in awe of the family reunion that was beginning to unfold. As conversations resumed, and laughter bubbled up like the joy that it was, Jim could see the hesitation melting away from his children. They stepped further into the center, taking in the transformed space, a reflection of hope and resilience. Perhaps this place had grown into something more than just walls and paint. Perhaps it represented a new beginning for all of them. His neighbors, freshly painted smiles stretched across their faces, watched as the family stood reunified amid the community's resurgence. There was an overwhelming sense of renewal in the air, like spring after a long, hard winter. Days melted into weeks as Jim and his children began rebuilding their relationship. They worked alongside the community, throwing potlucks and attending local events which filled the place with the joy they all yearned for. Slowly, the past began to fade, replaced by laughter shared over food and hearts slowly healing. But as the summer sun glinted off the freshly painted walls, a hidden shadow crept in. Jim overheard a conversation that froze his heart. What will happen once the novelty fades? A neighbor asked another, his voice low, filled with doubt. The question resonated ominously with Jim. Would they truly sustain this energy, or would they, too, fall back into silence and despair? With a heavy heart, Jim gazed out at the vibrant community celebrating their achievements. They had fought hard to get here, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still at risk of losing it all again. What would be required to hold this fragile rebirth together? As he pondered, he felt a warm hand upon his shoulder. It was Sarah, her eyes bright with a determination that sparked a flicker of hope within him. "We'll keep building, Dad. Together," she said, and Jim's heart swelled once more. But as new challenges loomed ahead, he couldn't help but wonder if they had the strength to weather the storm. Would unity endure when trials approached? And with that thought, Jim looked back at the crowd, ready to embrace whatever came next, the question of future struggles lingering in the air. Jim stood on the edge of the crowd, Sarah's words echoing in his heart. "We'll keep building, Dad. Together." It was as if a flicker of light had ignited some dormant hope within him. But the doubt that had crept and lingered in the back of his mind, whispering fears of failure, as the festivities unfolded around him, Jim's gaze shifted to the myriad of faces sharing in the laughter, the neighbors he had known for years, many who had weathered their own storms. Their camaraderie was palpable, the joy infectious. Children darted around, their laughter weaving through the air like a sweet melody. Mark, standing a little off to the side, caught Jim's eye. His son's face reflected a mix of relief and a hint of fear. It was an expression that resonated with Jim deeply. Mark had always been the responsible one, the one who hid his emotions under layers of stoicism. Jim could almost see the walls he'd built around his own heart mirrored in his son. Taking a deep breath, Jim slowly approached him.
"Can we talk?"
he asked, his heart pounding, fearing rejection. Mark nodded, and together they stepped away from the crowd. They found a quieter corner of the community center, where fading light streamed through the windows, casting gentle shadows that danced around them. "I never meant to push you away," Jim began, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I was just lost, and I thought if I stayed silent, things would get better. I was wrong." Mark looked down, his fingers fidgeting. "We were all hurting, Dad. I didn't know how to deal with that. I thought it was easier to turn away than to try to figure it all out." His voice cracked, filled with emotion. "I didn't want to drag you down with me." The weight of those words hit Jim hard. He reached out, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "You could never drag me down. I've always been with you, even when I wasn't. I want to understand what happened, what we can do to heal together." Mark met his gaze, vulnerability spilling forth. "I thought we could fix everything alone. I realize now we need each other." Jim smiled, feeling the warmth spreading in his chest again. It's never too late to reach out. You're stronger than you think, Mark. We're stronger together. As they stood there, a glimmer of understanding passed between them. It was an unspoken promise to fight for one another, to grow and rebuild as a family. Just then, Sarah appeared, her hands on her hips, a grin painted across her face like a sunflower in full bloom. Are you two coming back? They're starting the karaoke. Laughter bubbled up from the depths of Jim's chest as Mark chuckled, shaking his head. I don't know if I'm ready to sing in front of everyone, he said, feigning seriousness. Chicken. Sarah teased, clearly undeterred.
Simon.
We'll all do it together. Jim couldn't help but smile as he took in the scene, the unity, the laughter, the warmth wrapping around him like a comfortable blanket. Each moment was a step closer to something brighter, new beginnings built on the foundations of collective courage. But just as they turned to rejoin the festivities, an unsettling thought pierced through the joy. What if this was just a fleeting moment of bliss, only to be followed by more uncertainty? As they all trooped back toward the center, a deep unease gnawed at Jim's gut. In the shadows of laughter and kinship, he sensed that bigger challenges were still looming on the horizon, ready to test their newfound bond. Together, right? He whispered to himself, hoping the strength he felt now would be enough when the storm inevitably rolled in. Yet the whisper remained, unshakable and haunting, as it followed him like a shadow. Would the promise of togetherness withstand what lay ahead? The karaoke spotlight flickered brightly as they re-entered the crowd. Music swelled, filtering through Jim's thoughts, but the lingering doubt weighed heavily on him. He glanced at Mark and Sarah, both bright-eyed and ready to join in the fun, yet an unsettling knot twisted in his stomach. The crowd cheered as the first family took the stage. A wave of nostalgia washed over him, reminding him of simpler times before the storm of silence had settled over their home. He had taken for granted the joy of these little moments. The concern he held in his heart grew stronger, churning as the cheers echoed. Let us get up there soon, Sarah urged, eyes sparkling with excitement. She bounced on the tips of her toes, her enthusiasm contagious, but Jim felt tethered to the ground. Mark seemed to share in his father's apprehension, his expression uncertain despite his earlier willingness to connect. The weight of the unvoiced worries hung between them, heavier than any song awaiting their performance. Maybe we should wait until a few people have their turn, Mark suggested hesitatingly, his eyes darting away from Jim. Even in a crowd of laughter, it felt strangely isolating. Come on, you two. It'll all be fun. You can't let fear of karaoke win, Sarah retorted lightheartedly, nudging her brother. Her buoyancy lifted something in Jim, if only momentarily. He turned to Mark, searching for reassurance. What do you think? He asked, forcing a smile, but Mark's silence hung in the air. The weight of unspoken words felt heavier than ever. I don't know, Dad, Mark replied finally, glancing around as if looking for a way out. Maybe this isn't the right time. An unexpected sting of disappointment curled in Jim's chest. Mark, we just found our footing again, right?
We should celebrate that.
Mark met his father's gaze, and Jim could see the battle within him. The fear, the longing, the desire to break free from the past that had weighed them down. It feels different now. It felt like a slap, though Jim understood. This unspoken fear had become an invisible wall, one that they must tear down. You're right. It is different, but it doesn't have to hold us back. Mark nodded slowly, as though weighing his father's words. Just then, the song finished, and the crowd erupted into applause, the energy swirling around them like an inviting embrace. Together, they suddenly decided. All right, let us do it. Mark blurted out, surprising everyone. Even himself, Sarah squealed, and they joined the throng of excited faces. The three of them climbed onto the stage, the lights beaming down like a spotlight on their blossoming connection. Jim took a deep breath. Maybe this was the moment they could reclaim something precious together, a moment that meant more than a song, something monumental. As they began to sing, Jim felt his heart lift. Their voices blending awkwardly, but joyfully, they sang of hope and dreams, of love and resilience. The warmth from their shoulders brushed against each other, literally and figuratively. Laughter erupted among the audience, and he could feel Mark loosening up, Sarah dancing with abandon. But just as the song reached its crescendo, Jim spotted a stranger lurking near the back of the room. An unusual expression crossed the figure's face. Was it familiar? The joy poured from their performance surged through Jim, but unease trickled in as he felt eyes shifting towards the unexplained figure. "I'll go check it out," he whispered to Mark, who looked alarmed.
Dad, wait.
"We're in the middle of I'll be right back," Jim assured him, stepping off the stage as doubt washed over him anew. As he made his way through the crowd, confusion started to swirl in his mind. Who was this person? What were they doing here? His heart raced. In the midst of their celebration, would the shadows from the past rise to greet him once more? Jim's instincts screamed for him to confront whatever storm was brewing. The fabric of the evening felt suddenly fragile. Together, they had taken a step forward, but what if lurking threats loomed, ready to pull them back into the darkness? What did this intruder know about Jim's life, and how would it change everything they had just begun to rebuild? Jim pushed through the crowd, each step heavier than the last. The festive sounds of laughter and music faded into a dull murmur as he focused on the figure. Was it just a trick of the light, or did the stranger's gaze hold a certain recognition? As he neared, the face came into focus, a woman, drawn with familiar features and a resemblance that stirred shadows from his past. His breath caught. Was it her? After all these years, was she really back? He hadn't seen her since that fateful day, and her sudden presence sent a cold rush through him. "Hello, Jim," she said, her voice soft but layered with unspoken history. Every syllable struck a nerve, more than he anticipated.
Claire?
He stammered, grappling with disbelief. The weight of their shared past rolled over him like an avalanche. Memories crashed in, laughter, pain, and everything that tore them apart. His heart pounded like a bass drum in his ears. "What are you doing here?" he managed, glancing back toward the stage. Mark and Sarah, blissfully caught in their moment, unaware of the tempest brewing just a few feet away. "I came to see how you were to see them," Claire replied, looking past him, her eyes lingering on the stage. There was a flicker of fondness, a softness he hadn't expected. "Why now? After all this time?" His voice trembled with anger and confusion. "I thought about it every day," she admitted. "I wanted to reach out, but it felt wrong. I didn't want to disrupt what little peace you'd found. I didn't know how you would react." "Peace?" The irony tasted bitter in his mouth. "You think showing up unannounced is going to bring peace? You left us, Claire. You chose to walk away." The words felt heavy, each one loaded with grief and disappointment he had buried deep. Suddenly, the crowd erupted in applause as another family left the stage. Jim's heart raced even faster. Was this a nightmare? He couldn't handle the thought of his children learning too much too soon. "You need to go now," he urged, low and urgent as he stepped slightly closer. "There's something you should know. Nothing you say changes the past. They don't need this right now." Claire took a step back, her eyes filled with sorrow, and Jim felt a piece of him shatter. She opened her mouth to say something more, but he cut her off. "I need to get back to them." He turned away, and as he did, he caught a glimpse of Sarah's bright smile and Mark's slightly awkward yet genuine laughter. He felt a surge of heat. His heart waged war between duty to his children and the haunting ghost of Claire.
"Jim,"
she called after him, desperation lacing her tone. "Please. I promise I can explain everything. There's so much you don't know." But he couldn't turn back. The thought of what his kids might say, what they might think if they saw Claire's face twisted into something more complex, made him sick. They were just starting to find their way back to each other. Could this stranger really shatter the fragile threads they had woven? He stepped back onto the stage, desperately masking the storm inside him. As he rejoined Mark and Sarah, the warmth and immediacy of their bond surrounded him like a protective shield.
"Hey, Dad."
Mark grinned. "You okay?" "Yeah," Jim responded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But the evening felt different now, threaded with tension he couldn't shake. The joy in the room morphed into something uncertain, a feeling he couldn't ignore. What did Claire intend to reveal? And if they met again, would it destroy what they were trying to build? So many questions raced through his mind, clouding what should have been a moment of connection. What if Claire wasn't just a ghost from the past, but a catalyst for change in their lives? As the next act began, Jim took a deep breath, silently preparing for what was to come. He had faced some dark moments, but was he ready for another encounter with fate? The music played, but the shadows spoke louder than the cheerful notes. Jim leaned against the edge of the stage, the bright lights blurring into a haze. Laughter echoed around him, but inside, he felt frozen. The familiar faces of Mark and Sarah swam in and out of focus, their innocent joy cutting into his heart. Claire's voice lingered in his ears, wrapped in a tapestry of regret and unanswered questions. "Dad, what's wrong?" Sarah's voice pulled him back to the moment. She had a knack for sensing when he was off-kilter, and it made his heart ache even more. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just tired," Jim offered, waving away curiosity. He couldn't let them see the chaos swirling inside him. Not today. As the next act began, he forced himself to smile, to cheer for the performers as they took the stage. Mark leaned in, eyes bright with excitement. "Look at that guy. He's incredible." Jim nodded, but his eyes flickered again to where Claire had stood. She had looked older, softer, but the intensity in her gaze had that same fire from all those years ago. How could she just return as if all those years of silence hadn't existed, like they could pick up the pieces and glue them back together? Yet, every time he shifted his attention back to his children, the guilt clung tighter. Would Claire's return be the wrecking ball that brought their world crashing down? Did he have a right to what? To keep them from knowing her side of the story? To shelter them from that hurt?
Jim, come on. You're missing it.
Mark's call broke through his spiraling thoughts, and he turned just in time to see the performers finish with a dazzling flourish. The audience erupted in applause, and for a fleeting moment, joy swelled, lifting Jim's spirits, but that joy quickly faded as Claire's words echoed in his mind. "There's so much you don't know. What could she possibly say that would change anything?" He had already built walls so thick to keep himself safe and to protect the children. Couldn't she see that? His heart raced at the thought of confronting her again. What would happen if they spoke? Could he trust himself to face the memories? The anger? Or even the regrets that still clung to him like a thin veil, whispering doubts? "Earth to Dad." Sarah waved her hands in front of him, breaking the spell that held him captive. He blinked and smiled awkwardly. "Sorry, just thinking about life." "Life like, from the 80s? Mark teased, earning an elbow from Sarah. The banter lightened the mood, and for a moment, he felt like everything was right. But the moment was short-lived. He had to confront the reality and determine the path ahead. Would he bury the past again? Or face it head-on, risking everything for the sake of truth? The crowd cheered, but Jim's smile faded as a sense of impending doom settled heavily on him. He looked down at his kids, their faces bright with laughter, and the pain of keeping them in the dark pulled at him. What if knowing Claire would change how they felt about him? A splash of color on stage drew his attention back. The performers were laughing, celebrating a job well done. It all blurred together. The music faded, and only Claire's face returned in sharp focus. "Why did you come back?" He whispered to himself, breathless. Then he felt a presence near him, and to his shock, Claire was standing just outside the light, looking over the crowd. The fabric of his thoughts unraveled, and he was caught between two worlds, the warmth of family and the weight of unresolved history. "Jim," her voice again, this time just above a whisper, plaintive yet unwavering. He could already feel the ground shifting beneath him, and suddenly, he wondered. Was he ready to listen to her? Was he prepared to brave what the truth might bring? In that moment, everything felt poised on the edge. He had to make a choice, to dive back into the past or keep forging ahead. Each option loomed like a shadow, dark and heavy, waiting to consume him whole, and then, before he could stop himself, he took a step toward her, caught between dread and the flicker of hope. As the choice loomed closer, a question buried deep rose to the surface. What if she could help him find a path forward instead of a reason to turn back? Could this unexpected reunion lead to healing, or would it unravel everything he desperately fought to hold together? Jim's heart raced as he stepped toward Claire, each breath heavy with the weight of years lost. The noise of the crowd faded around him, the bright lights casting their glow on ghosts of what could have been. For the first time in a long while, the air felt electric, charged with unspoken words and hidden feelings. Jim, Claire said again, her eyes glistening in the warm glow. He could see a mix of hope and fear there, just like the swirling emotions inside him.
Can we talk?
Every instinct told him to run, to retreat back to the safety of his children, but instead, he nodded. The kids were still occupied, caught up in laughter and excitement. Maybe they wouldn't notice him slipping away just for a moment. He led Claire to the edge of the bustling space, a quieter corner where the music faded and the laughter dimmed into the background. This wasn't the place he imagined having this conversation. It was all too surreal, standing here with her in this safe bubble, surrounded by memories he didn't want to confront. Why now? He struggled to control the tremor in his voice, keeping it steady. After all these years? I never meant to stay away, Jim. She paused, closing her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. There were reasons, complicated ones. Complicated reasons. The phrase felt like a brick in his gut. Life has been complicated for all of us, he said, his voice sharper than he intended. We managed. We built a life. Without me, Claire added gently, her gaze unwavering. But I need you to understand, I wasn't just gone to hurt you or the kids. I thought I was making the right choice. Jim clenched his fists, memories flooding back. The promises they made, the dreams they built. How could she frame this as a choice when it tore their family apart? No, Claire. He shook his head, pain surfacing with every word. You left when we needed you most. My kids, they don't even know who you are. How can I explain that? How can I trust you again? Tears glimmered in her eyes, but they held a strength he hadn't noticed before. I know I don't deserve it, but I want a chance to tell them my side, to show them I'm not the person they think I am. I want to make things right. The idea twisted inside him like a knife. Could he let her back into their lives? Could he risk everything he built, staring into the abyss of the past? His breathing hitched as memories flickered. Claire laughing with the kids, Sunday mornings filled with pancakes, and nights filled with dreams. Do you really think you can walk back into their lives and it'll all be fine? He asked, barely recognizing his own voice. You think you can just flip a switch? No, she said, her voice steady and confident. It will take time. But I'm here, Jim. I want to help. Please, let me try. For your kids, and for us. Silence fell around them, thick and heavy. A part of him wanted to scream at her, to tell her how gut-wrenching it was to keep the truth hidden, how scared he was of losing everything again. Just then, Marcus' voice rang out, calling for him.
Dad.
Where are you? He glanced back at his son, so full of life and joy, everything he wanted to protect. The sight almost broke him. Claire, he began, voice wavering. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, she replied softly, stepping back slightly as if to recognize his need for distance, yet not willing to concede defeat. But I want to disappear again. I'm here to stay. As she turned, a wave of uncertainty crashed over him. Could he allow her back in after all this time? Could he let the children see her? Mark ran up to him, pulling him back into the present, his laughter spilling out like sunshine. But the laughter felt dim now. He wasn't sure how to juggle this new revelation. As the lightness of the moment collided with the heaviness in his heart, Jim felt the ground beneath him shift again. What if Claire was right? What if this time could lead to healing? But even more frightening, what if it didn't? Dad? Mark's voice broke into his thoughts once more, and Jim returned to his children's faces, searching for answers in their innocent smiles. All he knew was that the weight of choice rested heavily on his shoulders, and the next move could change everything. With Claire's figure fading into the crowd, the question loomed, How would he navigate this newfound uncertainty, and could he brave the storm that lay ahead? Jim felt the warmth of the summer evening wrap around him, but a chill ran down his spine as he turned back to Mark and his daughter, Sarah, who was chasing after a balloon that danced just out of her reach. The joy in their faces, so pure and innocent, twisted his heart. Could he really bring Claire back into their lives? Still processing the encounter, he forced a smile as Mark tugged at his shirt. "Dad, can we go on the rides now? Please? I want to try the Ferris wheel." The excitement in his son's voice cut through the turmoil, pulling Jim back to the present. "Sure, buddy. Let us do it," Jim replied, trying to mask his inner conflict. He walked alongside Mark, stealing glances at Sarah, who finally caught the balloon. Her squeal of delight filled Jim with a bittersweet warmth. As they made their way to the rides, memories flickered in and out of focus. He could see Claire laughing with them at the last summer fair they had attended as a complete family. Those moments felt like a lifetime ago, yet they haunted him now. One part of him yelled to keep Claire out, to shield his children at all costs. Another part whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was a path to forgiveness. The Ferris wheel loomed before them, lights flashing against the darkening sky. Mark practically bounced on his feet, tugging harder.
Come on, Dad.
"Let us go." All right, Jim chuckled, feeling the warmth of his son's eagerness seep into his tense heart. As they climbed aboard the ride and the car began its slow ascent, Jim's heartbeat quickened, not from fear of heights, but from the reality of risk. He was about to expose his children to a woman who had once walked away from them. At the top of the Ferris wheel, they paused, the view stretching beyond the park into fading twilight. Jim looked over at Mark and Sarah, their faces glowing in delight. As the height offered a moment of surreal clarity, he felt the weight of their expectations resting on him. What would he tell them if Claire re-entered their lives? How would he explain her absence? "Isn't this the best, Dad?" Mark exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. "Yeah, it's amazing," Jim replied, forcing a smile as he willed his heart to catch up with his thoughts. But it was the softness in Claire's voice that echoed in his mind. "I want to show them I'm not the person they think I am. I want to make things right." Could he trust that desire was genuine? As the ride began its slow descent, Jim felt the pull of gravity magnified by the pull of his conscience. Would he deny Claire the chance to prove herself? "Dad, are you okay?" Sarah's small voice cut through his thoughts like a gentle breeze. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just thinking," he said, glancing down to find her gazing up at him with those bright, innocent eyes. They believed in him, in their family, and yet he was teetering on the edge of a decision that could change everything. As they disembarked, Jim froze for a moment, feeling the ground shift under him once more. He thought of Claire's determination and his children's happiness. Maybe this journey they were on was only beginning an uncharted path that led to healing and new beginnings. As they stepped back into the throngs of visitors, the air buzzed with laughter and chatter. Jim gripped Mark's hand tightly, uncertainty pressing into his bones. Was he ready to confront the past? Could he face Claire again, with the weight of their family and his children's futures on the line? "Hey, Dad?" Mark's voice brought him back. "What's next?" Jim paused, looking ahead into the chaotic joy of the fair. "I guess we'll see, buddy. Right now, let us just have some fun." But as he joined in his kids' laughter, a thought lingered ominously in the background. How long could he put off the choices that loomed ahead? Each passing moment brought him closer to a reckoning he could no longer avoid. As they moved through the crowds, laughter faded momentarily, but the impending storm hovered nearby, waiting just around the corner. Would he be ready when it inevitably arrived? The sounds of the fair surrounded them, reminding Jim of the vibrant life he desperately wanted to reclaim. As the laughter of children mingled with the distant melodies of carnival games, he watched Mark and Sarah dart toward a colorful booth filled with prizes, their faces lit with excitement. Yet, within Jim, uncertainty simmered, turning his stomach with every laugh that echoed in his ears. "Whoa! Look at that!" Mark shouted, pointing towards a giant stuffed bear suspended in midair, and dashed towards it with Sarah close behind. Jim followed but found himself lagging, caught in the haze of conflicting emotions. He should be focusing on their happiness, but his mind kept drifting back to Claire. Could she really change? He took a deep breath, attempting to drown out the memories of her leaving broken promises that still felt fresh. Yet, around him his children were radiant. They deserved joy. They deserved a family that worked.
Dad, can we win it?
Mark's voice broke through his thoughts again, eyes gleaming with anticipation as he looked back, practically bouncing on his heels in front of the booth. Yeah, let us try, Jim said, feigning enthusiasm. The booth attendant handed Mark a dart with a playful grin, and Jim felt a rush of pride as his son aimed carefully. With a deep breath, Mark threw the dart. It struck the board, but bounced off harmlessly. Ah, come on. Mark pouted, disappointment washing over him so quickly, Jim's heart ached for his son. Here, let me show you, Jim said, taking the dart with a grin. He stepped up and, with careful focus, tossed the dart. It hit its mark, just not the bullseye, but enough to win a consolation prize. The attendant handed over a smaller plush dinosaur.
Cool.
Thanks, Dad. I want a bear too, Mark declared, eyes sparkling once more. We'll get it next time. I promise, Jim laughed, tightening his grip around Mark's shoulder, drawing him into a side hug. As Sarah bounced around him, laughing and claiming the plush dinosaur, Jim allowed a flicker of hope to ignite in his chest. He could rebuild. He just needed to take one step after another. Yet, with each smile, the heavy question loomed in the corner of his mind: would Claire be part of this new chapter? Can we go to the game where you knock over the bottles next? Sarah jumped up and down, eager for the next adventure. All right, but just one more game, Jim agreed, willing to indulge their joy for a moment longer. They strolled toward the next booth, and as they did, he caught sight of a familiar figure standing just outside the ring of lights. An electric jolt shot through him, the world narrowing down to a singular focus. There she was, Claire. It was unmistakable, the once loyal woman now a shadow of the person he'd once loved.
Dad, come on.
Mark tugged at his arm, completely unaware of the storm brewing in his father's chest. Just a minute, Jim managed to utter, his heart racing. He felt torn between instinctive anger and deep curiosity. This moment demanded action, a confrontation that had been postponed for far too long.
Who is it, Dad?
Sarah looked up, observing his hesitation. Just someone I need to talk to, kids, he replied, each word echoing with a request he wasn't yet ready to manifest. Will she have that bear? Mark chirped innocently, breaking Jim from his reverie. He felt blood drain from his face as he replied, No, buddy. She asked someone from the past. He took a step forward, unsure if it was towards salvation or disaster. As he approached Claire, her eyes widened in recognition, a mix of surprise and something like fear. The world around him blurred, the laughter quieting in the backdrop. Jim, her voice, still familiar, hit him like a wave crashing against the shore. Claire, he said, mind racing. What would he say? How could they even begin to bridge the chasm created by time and hurt? In that moment, beneath the lights of the fair that had once been a place of family joy, he was suddenly aware of everything at stake. Could this encounter be the first step toward healing, or was he just plunging into deeper turmoil? As a part of him desperately hoped for a miracle, another part braced for the fallout.
Dad.
Are you coming? Mark's voice floated back to him, and in that instant, Jim knew he needed to decide. What would he say next? The moment stretched, and he felt the weight of every promise made and broken hang in the air. Maybe it's time to confront the past, but can I handle what comes next? Jim stood before Claire, feeling the weight of 1,000 memories crush against his chest. Each fragile moment hung in the air, filled with unspoken pain and scattered pieces of their shared history. The laughter and excitement from the fair seemed muffled, muted by the tension. Could she really be here, standing in front of him after all these years, ready to reclaim the love and connection they once had? Hi, Jim, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes sparkled with tears, yet they were filled with a fierce determination that made Jim's heart pound. She looked almost like the woman he once loved, but sharp corners of regret and the years of separation had etched new stories on her face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, unable to hide the tremor in his voice. A swirl of emotions, anger, longing, confusion rose inside him. He felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss. "I wanted to see Mark and Sarah," she said, her words spilling out in a rush. "I know I made mistakes, but I can explain. I want to do better. For you and for the kids." For a brief moment, Jim glanced back at Mark and Sarah. They were still laughing and darting around the fair, oblivious to the weight that had just shifted in their father's world. But could he risk everything they'd built over the past months just because she was asking for a chance? Heartbreak rushed through him, recalling how he had once hoped for her return, only to be shattered when she walked away. "Jim," Claire's gentle voice pulled him back. "Please. I don't want to disrupt your life. I just want a shot at making things right. I've thought about the kids every single day. And if you give me a chance, I won't waste it." He swallowed hard, battling the tumultuous sea of emotions. "You think a few words can fix everything? Do you realize how much you hurt us?" Anger bubbled up again, but it was quickly matched by a flicker of hope. Could she really mean what she was saying? Would she really change? Claire nodded, her expression softening, but Jim could see an edge of resolve in her eyes. "I know I can't erase the past, but I'm ready to face it. I'm ready to fight for them. For you." As the laughter of the fairgoers bubbled up around him, the reality of his children's joy filled Jim's heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. In that moment, he knew he had a choice to make, a pivotal choice that could either bring them back together or keep them shackled to pain. "Okay," he finally said, taking a deep breath. "Let us talk." The words poured out, filled with both hope and trepidation. He couldn't deny the possibility that lay within this conversation. Claire's eyes lit up, a mix of surprise and gratitude washing over her. "Really? You won't regret it, Jim. I swear." As he led her through the crowd, he braced himself for the inevitable fallout with Mark and Sarah. How would he explain her presence? Their faces glowed as they spotted their father and the mystery woman following him. The joy in their eyes tugged at Jim's heartstrings. "Who was that, Dad?" Sarah squeaked, innocence shining in her voice. "Kids, this is Claire, your mom," Jim replied, every word heavy with uncharted territory. The air felt electric around them. Mark froze, his face a blend of confusion and curiosity, while Sarah's eyes widened, searching between her dad and this unfamiliar woman. "Mom?" Mark echoed, filling the word with both wonder and conflict. In that moment, Jim saw the fear creeping back into his son, reminiscent of when Claire left. "Hey, sweethearts," Claire said, her voice trembling at the edges. "I know this is a surprise, and I'm so sorry for leaving. I've missed you both more than I can say." The silence hung heavily, a charged tension filling the space between them. Mark's expression darkened, tension cracking like thunder. "You just show up now? After all this time?" Jim held his breath, praying for patience. "Mark, please, I'm here to stay, and I want to be part of your lives," Claire replied, her voice steady now. "I know I don't deserve your trust, but I hope to earn it back one day at a time." Everyone watched closely, emotions shifting like the wind. Jim's heart raced in rhythm with the rising tide of uncertainty. It was a raw moment, and he could see the fractures forming as each child processed the unfamiliarity of a mother they barely remembered. "Give us a chance," Jim urged, stepping closer to his kids, grounding them with his warm presence. "We've created something beautiful in the community, and I believe we can turn this chapter around. But we need to do it together." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, words unspoken swirling in the air, then slowly nodded. "Okay," Mark said slowly, uncertainty dancing in his voice. "Yeah," Sarah added softly. "Can we really try?" Jim nodded, wrapping his arms around them. "Yes. Together, we can rebuild. All of us." As Claire looked at them, tears glistening, Jim felt a wave of emotion wash over him.
Hope.
Healing. Perhaps the shadows of the past could finally recede, replaced by a future filled with laughter, love, and second chances. They stood together, holding on to the promise of what could be. As laughter erupted from the fair around them, they became a portrait of a family on the brink of resurgence, ready to embrace the future, whatever storms it may hold. This was their moment, the beginning of something new, and in that instant, Jim knew he would fight for this chance, one step at a time. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.